Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated and taking over Ichigo's body. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 91, Facing Zaraki. Unable to pierce defense? Shifting his gaze back from Yuichiro and Rukia, Ichigo looked at the Zaraki ahead. As if also sensing Ichigo's fighting spirit, Zaraki's mouth curved into a fierce grin. Ikaku told me about you. He said you'd let me have fun. Was he right? He was right. Ichigo smiled. The next moment, both vanished from their original positions. Zangetsu Cleaver and the Asachi simultaneously struck each other's bodies. Clang! Clang! Two metallic clashing sounds rang out. What? How is this possible? Holy crap, are these two even human? May I ask, are their Shihakusho made of steel armor? Comments of surprise flooded the live stream. They were simply too astonished. Because after watching the stream for so long, this was the first time they'd seen such a scene. Ichigo and Zaraki's first exchange, neither of them even attempted to defend. Ichigo holding Zangetsu Cleaver simply slashed at Zaraki, and Zaraki holding the still unnamed Zanpakuto simply slashed at Ichigo. But whether it was Ichigo's slash on Zaraki or Zaraki's slash on Ichigo, after scraping out a shower of sparks, neither could penetrate further. It was as if both had struck steel against each other. But the problem was, both were human flesh. Watching this, the three observing captains were also very shocked. Zaraki Kenpachi has powerful Ryatsu, allowing him to form a Hierro-like defense on his body's surface. But that Ryoka has decent Ryatsu, not at Zaraki Kenpachi's level. Why does he have a similar effect? Looking at Ichigo, Kamamura said curiously. He looked at Tozen beside him. Tozen, did you sense anything? Looking at Ichigo, Tozen pondered slightly. Born blind, his perception was very sharp. After sensing the spot where Ichigo was struck, Tozen said. Beneath that Ryoka's shoulder, there's an abnormal gathering of Reisure. It is this gathering of Reisure that produces this defensive effect. As for what kind of technique this is, Tozen carefully sensed. Knowing Ichigo's origins, he had some guesses but couldn't be certain. So he could only say, I cannot determine either. Is that so? Kamamura nodded, understanding, then looked back at the field. Ha ha, my sword actually can't pierce your defense. Interesting. Seeing his sword unable to penetrate, and the opponent's sword also unable to penetrate his defense, Zaraki got excited. Then, how about this? Zaraki increased his power as if competing, standing right there and slashing at Ichigo. And Ichigo did the same. Thus, two more clang sounds. Their swords again struck each other's shoulders. Apart from tearing their clothes, both remained completely unharmed. Now, after the clothes tore, the patterns of blood vein on Ichigo's shoulder finally became visible. So this is your defense? Looking at the patterns on Ichigo's shoulder, Zaraki was intrigued. Correct. Unlike you forming Hierro with powerful Ryatsu, injecting Reisure into blood vessels to enhance the body's defense, that's my ability. Ichigo explained. At the same time, he suggested, neither of us can break the other's defense. In that case, how about raising the stakes? Good. Zaraki gripped his Asachi with both hands, golden Ryatsu beginning to burn on the sword. Simultaneously, Ichigo also gripped Zangetsu with both hands, the blue light of Getsuga Tensho glowing. Next moment. Getsuga Tensho. Kanatsu slash. Getsuga Tensho and Zaraki's Kanatsu simultaneously struck each other's bodies. And this time, there was finally no metallic clanging sound. Boom. Blue and golden light intertwined and exploded. Intense Ryatsu tangled together. Similarly, facing such moves, the two finally broke through each other's defenses. Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho cut a wound from Zaraki's shoulder down to his chest. Zaraki's Kanatsu also cut a gash on Ichigo's shoulder. As blood flowed from both, the impact force also knocked each other back. Interesting, you guy. I have a feeling this will be a satisfying battle. Looking at Ichigo, Zaraki's eyes burned with passion. Is that so? Then I wonder if you'd like something even more interesting. Warm-up should just about end here, right? Ichigo steadied himself, the Ryatsu on his body beginning to rise. Oh? Zaraki's expression became expectant. The next moment, Ichigo wiped his left hand across his face. A hollow mask appeared on Ichigo's face. Black hollow Ryatsu shot into the sky. This state is called hollowification. It breaks the boundary between Shinigami and hollow power, obtaining the power of hollows. Ha! Looking at such an Ichigo, Zaraki also removed the eye patch over his right eye. Instantly, golden Ryatsu gushed from Zaraki's body, like a Super Saiyan transformation. Golden Ryatsu intertwined, forming a pillar that pierced the clouds. Then, Zaraki explained to Ichigo. My Ryatsu was too strong. I've never been able to find a suitable opponent to enjoy the fun of battle. This eye patch was developed by the Research and Development Institute. A monster that continuously devours Ryatsu. From now on, I'll be at full strength. After fighting for a while, both open their final forms. If you disregard the part where they keep swinging swords at each other, their interaction was quite harmonious. And watching Ichigo and Zaraki successively activate stronger forms, the audience noticing this also realized. Strange, aren't these two enemies? Why do I feel their fight isn't really a fight, but more like a discussion to give each other a light workout? Yeah, Ichigo seems quite friendly towards the Zaraki. What's going on? The comments buzzed with discussion. And not just the comments, the two captains in the distance also noticed. That's Zaraki. A monster who takes pleasure in slaughter, who killed the previous Kenpachi to take his place, and now even plays friendly matches with Ryoka? Simply unforgivable. The righteous Tozen angrily gripped his sword hilt. Looking at Zaraki, Kamamura was equally angry. Tozen, how about the two of us go? Kamamura suggested. Kamamura was confident. He believed that with him and Tozen joining force, they could handle either Zaraki or Ichigo. But then, Unohana, who had been smiling while watching the battle, as if hearing their words, turned her head to look at them. Toward the two, Unohana gave a gentle smile. Sister Hana, bestowed with the keyword benevolence by Kubo, with eyes curved in warm smile. But noticing such a gaze, both Kamamura and Tozen stiffened simultaneously, as if stared at by some prehistoric beast. Instantly, the two fell silent, no longer discussing interrupting the battle. Their thoughts only showed they didn't truly understand Zaraki. They understood a bit about Ichigo and Zaraki's fight, but only a bit. The comments guessed correctly too. Ichigo was indeed very friendly. The act of slashing each other was more like making friends than fighting. At the same time, it was also a necessary approach. Just as Kamamura and Tozen were warned. In a fight with Zaraki, if one exploited his habit of taking hits, starting with hollowification in 2 slashes, even if not killing him, a first encounter defeat was definitely possible. The original Ichigo could do that, but the current one couldn't. He couldn't skip this battle. Because, this was about human relations. Unohana was watching from behind. If she didn't want Zaraki to have a complete battle experience, why would she help so thoroughly? Chapter 92 Oraheim injured. Of course, Ichigo could also act recklessly, ignoring all this. But if he schemed against Zaraki this time, the next encounter would only bring even more intense battles, so there was no need. At the same time, since the situation was laid out like this, Ichigo could only turn disadvantage into advantage. Zaraki was a very easy person to understand. He existed for battle, valued battle above all else, even disregarding the bigger picture for it. In his view, only slaughter was the source of joy. It was precisely to enjoy the process of battle that Zaraki self-sealed many years ago and now wore an eye patch. Ichigo's actions were telling Zaraki, "I understand you, and I'm willing to give you an exhilarating battle." But since he was willing to give, naturally, it was because he wanted something in return. Knowing Ichigo's attitude, Zaraki didn't care. If someone could give him a fight, he'd agree to many things. But no matter what was wanted, it had to be discussed after surviving his sword first. So, fight was fight. Zaraki wouldn't hold back when slashing. The next moment, under the critical gazes of Kamamura and Tozen, Black Getsuga Tensho and Golden Kanatsu collided again. Rumble rumble. A huge sound erupted. The immense impact force caused the ground beneath the two to explode into a circular crater centered on them, as if struck by a heavy hammer. Black and Golden Ryatsu clashed. A pillar of Ryatsu shot into the sky. From afar, it looked like the world was divided into Black and Golden halves centered on Ichigo and Zaraki. Then, like two competing bulls, after the first strike, the two in the center pushed each other away with force. Then, after creating some distance, Ichigo wrapped in Black Ryatsu and Zaraki wrapped in Golden Ryatsu collided at high speed again. Intense rumbling reappeared. The powerful force caused the ground to tremble. One might think this was a pile driver worksite. In the field, after this clash, both Ichigo and Zaraki had their sword-wielding hands Perlicue instantly split. T/N, Perlicue is the webbing between thumb and index finger. Zangetsu and the Asachi wrestled against each other, then bounced apart again. It seemed the two were about to clash a third time. The imposing Black and Golden lights charged forward at high speed. But this time, Ichigo finally changed tactics. The seemingly grand lunge was just a feint. Using Sonito after holification, Ichigo vanished from in front of Zaraki 1 second and appeared charging from behind him the next. Swish! Zangetsu slashed down without the slightest hesitation. A huge bloody gash erupted on Zaraki's back. In pain, Zaraki swung his sword backhanded behind him. But Ichigo, with a nimble Herenkyaku, appeared at Zaraki's side, and the large Zangetsu blade swung down again. Swish! Another huge wound appeared. 2 tactical changes, and Zaraki suffered 2 consecutive wounds. What's happening? Watching this, Kamamura and Tozen on the side were shocked. Not only them, even Zaraki was very puzzled. What kind of speed is this? Zaraki asked strangely. Sonito, the step of hollows. Ichigo answered. Among the 3 movement techniques of Shinigami, Shuinpa, Quincy, Herenkyaku, and Hollow/Arankar, Sonito, the Arankar Sonito was the most superior. If a Shinigami Shuinpa was just an ordinary skill, then the Quincy's Herenkyaku, controlling Reisher flow to move, was more advanced in technique than Shuinpa. But what made Sonito excellent was its essence. The essence of Sonito was an expansion of the Hollow's ability to tear space. Sonito was actually small-scale spatial teleportation. That's why Ichigo could slash from behind Zaraki. Unfortunately, such an ability could only be used once or twice when things got serious. Ichigo used Sonito again. But this time, what greeted him was Zaraki's blade. Clang! Zangetsu and the Asachi collided and then separated. With powerful intuition, Zaraki predicted where Ichigo would appear. But Ichigo never intended to win using Sonito. To deal with Zaraki, raw slashing power was needed. After a flashy exchange, the two returned to simple, unadorned blade clashes. Powerful blades clashed, air vibrated, the ground shattered, intense rumbling hurt eardrums. But undoubtedly, the battle had now entered a stalemate. The fight with Zaraki would still take some time to conclude. However, just as everyone was watching Ichigo and Zaraki's battle intently, in Ichigo's livestream, where comments decreased due to his focus on battle, an anxious comment appeared. Bad news, brothers. Go check the Shigwa players' streams, look at Gittu. Ishida Yuryu and the others, who haven't been seen, were discovered by those Shigwa players. What? Holy crap, is my wife Oraheim okay? Go, go. Seeing the sudden comment, everyone became extremely tense. Quickly leaving Ichigo's stream, everyone searched among the remaining 4,000 plus players for Get 2's stream as mentioned. At that moment, in Shigwa player, Get 2's stream, a chase was underway. All the 2 ND Division Shigwa players, plus a few other Shigwa players in high positions who hadn't switched divisions, were hotly pursuing Yuryu and the others. Leading them was Get 2, the person mentioned. His identity was the 4th seat of the 4th Division, Jirobo Ikanzaka, also the younger brother of the gatekeeper Ichigo's group encountered. Flap away, Sunzakigaresu. At the trio, Get 2 released his Zanpakuto. Instantly, Get 2's slender Zanpakuto, like Senbonzakura, transformed its blade into numerous small flying daggers. Controlling countless flying daggers, Get 2, as if using sword control arts, shot the many daggers at the fleeing trio in the distance. As the trio ran, fierce whooshing sounds approached. Seeing this, Orihime quickly turned back. Santen Keshin, I reject. Hinajiku, Lily, and Bagan flew out, pulling up the Santen Keshin behind the trio. The triangular shield blocked most of Get 2's flying daggers. The problem was, Get 2's daggers could be manually controlled. The triangular Santen Keshin couldn't block all attacks. Before the Santen Keshin could intercept, most daggers deftly changed trajectory, bypassing the shield. Then, these daggers that bypassed the Santen Keshin continued unabated towards Orihime. In a way. Seeing this, Chad, while running, turned his body to block most of the daggers for Orihime. However, a few daggers still struck Orihime. Sharp daggers sliced across Orihime's shoulder, slender waist, thigh, and other places, drawing thin lines of blood. Ah! Blades striking her, Orihime let out a heartbreaking cry of pain. Orihime wasn't a warrior. Warriors could endure pain and keep fighting, but she couldn't. Since she was just a healer/support mage, Orihime felt her body go weak the moment the blade struck, then collapsed from her run. In a way. Chad and Yuryu called out in concern. But with Orihime down, they had to stop, placing her in the center. Thus, the trio being chased moments ago were instantly surrounded. Chapter 93 Counterattack. Watching this, Get 2's stream also flooded with comments. Seeing Shigwa players found the trio, a group of Shigwa viewers were excited. Yes, that's right. These are Ichigo's companions. Kill them, Get 2. That Ichigo definitely didn't expect, did he? Our Soul Society players have long united. Ha, so what if he's the top player? His own teammates are still being hunted by us. Yeah, this Inoue Orihime seems to really like that Ichigo. If she's killed, Ichigo will cry for a long time, right? Kill? Isn't just killing too cheap? Let Get to use this blade, perform the skill of skinning people, make a leather bag, and gift it to Ichigo, wouldn't that be better? First floor, I prefer having fun with her than killing. If I remember correctly, this Inoue Orihime should only be 15, right? Keek. Because the stream was completely anonymous, many Shigwa perverts freely released their darkness in the comments. And more frighteningly, such disgusting statements actually had support from other Shigwa viewers. Right, exactly. That's how to deal with these monkeys. Make that Ichigo feel pain. In the hearts of Shigwa viewers, Ichigo was already a major enemy. So seeing Shigwa players encounter Ichigo's main cast made them as excited as hitting the jackpot. But unlike these excited Shigwa viewers, the Dongwei audience who just found Get 2's stream and entered became furious upon seeing this. Damn it, these bastards dare bully my wife Orihime. My blood pressure is up, brothers. Who can make these idiots back off? Ugh, I say Ichigo shouldn't have brought these people. Aren't they completely deadweight? He himself is facing captain-level battles, but these three are being chased by ordinary Shinigami. Damn it, I'm so annoyed. Yeah, saying that, I also don't quite understand Ichigo. Why bring these friends? Seeing Orihime being harmed, my heart aches. Regarding the trio's plight, everyone was worried, angry, and also somewhat puzzled. Though wanting to help Orihime and the others, currently they were just headless ants, clueless. But soon, everyone's emotions turned to anger. Damn, I can understand Shigua's language. You can't imagine the disgusting things these Shigua idiots are saying. Demasha, I also understand. These Shigua perverts are truly awful. Because in the same stream, Dongwei viewers who understood Shigua's language translated the Shigua comments. Filthy language continued non-stop. Everyone angrily got out of bed. So some hot-headed guys opened translation apps and started wielding words. And the Shigua perverts in Get2 stream soon noticed the increasing Donggua's language comments. A machine-translated cursing war began. However, no matter how the stream's cursing war developed, it couldn't affect the ongoing battle. Surrounding the trio with nearly 100 2nd Division Shigua Shinigami players, Get2 looked at the trapped trio and showed a satisfied smile. He didn't know about Ichigo's affairs, but that didn't stop him from wanting to earn kill points. Though the 2nd Division was safe, they still earned fewer points. These 3 Ryoka were solid achievements and points. Also, looking at the 15-year-old, very young Inoue Oraheim, a lewd glint flashed in Get2's eyes. Such a young girl, the sound made when pierced by a blade must be nice. Manipulating the flying daggers spinning around him, as a Shinigami in a high position among Shigua players, Get2 gave the order. Everyone, go! Apprehend the Ryoka. A group of ninjas charged forward. The problem was, Ichigo bringing Yuryu and the other 2 wasn't just because they were his friends, but because these 3 indeed had potential. Chad's ability fully awakened could fight against an Espada. Yuryu was the heir of the Wandenrake. Oraheim's ability, called Rejection of Phenomena by Aizen, was an ability that infringed upon the divine realm. These 3 weren't so easily captured. Moreover, in a team, what determines the lower limit? The attack damage carry. Though this wasn't a MOBA game, the principles still applied. Yuryu, having completed the Sanrei glove, possessed absolute lieutenant-level strength. And Chad, Oraheim, Yuryu are a classic tank-mage-healer combo. Everyone had misunderstood. Yuryu and the others ran not because they couldn't fight, but because they didn't want to kill. Thus, after Oraheim was injured and they had nowhere else to retreat, Yuryu said to the other 2. Sato, Inoue, we have to fight back. Okay. Chad nodded decisively. But hearing Yuryu, Oraheim hesitated. Huh? Fight people? We have to. Otherwise, being chased by these people, we won't be able to find Kurosaki. Yuryu urged. All right. Hearing his words, Oraheim finally resolved. But Oraheim didn't know her worry about killing was completely unnecessary. Just then, a ninja-dressed Shigua player ahead, eyes gleaming with desire for points, charged forward alone using Shuanpa. Seeing this, Chad summoned his giant's right arm and threw a heavy punch. The hard fist struck the ninja player's ninja sword. Then, immense power came from the fist. The ninja player felt like he was hit by a train. His ninja sword broke, and the fist continued unabated to strike his chest. Boom! Under Chad's punch, the Shigua ninja player felt a pain in his chest, his whole body flying high like a broken kite. Dash! A large amount of blood spewed from the Shigua player's mouth. After flying for a while, the Shigua player heavily landed. His mangled body crashed into the group of Shigua ninja players. Under everyone's wide-eyed stares, he soon lay still. Then, players watching saw the Shigua ninja player's caved-in chest suddenly restore, as if uninjured. But all who saw this knew it wasn't that he wasn't injured, it was that the Shigua player had died. And despite having killed a person with one punch, Chad acted as if unaware he'd killed, his next fist swinging at another. Because when they killed, they weren't killing real Shinigami, but players who had taken their identities. When a player died, all native memories would be modified. Chad would only think his punch just knocked the person out. But the players themselves remembered. Why are they so strong? Watching this, Get2 was dumbfounded. He thought these people were being chased by him because they were weak. He never imagined they had seat-level strength. Under Chad's fists, 2 ND Division's Shinigami players continuously flew high. Simultaneously, Yuryu drew his bow, licked Regan.
A dense rain of arrows showered everyone.
The Shigwa players, only ordinary Shinigami strength and having lived comfortably in the relatively safe second division for a long time, fell one by one under Yuryu's sharp arrows. Most terrifyingly, Yuryu was completely unaware he was killing. Thus, Yuryu, behind his glasses, cast a sharp gaze at Gitu.
"So you're the one who hurt Inoue?"
Yuryu said while drawing his bow.
Chapter 94 Stand Attack.
Then, just like in the original work, one arrow struck towards his Seketsu and another struck towards his Hikusui.
Gitu tried to swing his flying daggers to block Yuryu Ishida's arrows but was completely no match. Yuryu's arrows easily pierced Gitu.
His Seketsu and Hikusui were shattered.
Though not dead, a thunderbolt-like sense of powerlessness suddenly struck.
Before long, the group of Shigwa players chasing the trio was completely wiped out. Watching this, both Shigwa and Dongwa viewers in the stream who were still arguing were stunned.
"Hold on, if you're this strong, why were you running? Damn, Ishida, Yuryu and the others are actually this strong?" Dongwa viewers exclaimed in amazement. Only then did they understand Ichigo's intent.
The team of four was a perfectly configured party. So, Ichigo's choice wasn't wrong.
His teammates, as long as they don't encounter captains, are completely fine.
We worried for nothing.
A thick sense of speechlessness lingered in everyone's hearts. And behind the Dongwa viewers, surprised comments from Shigwa viewers appeared again.
Seeing the surprised Shigwa comments, Dongwa viewers showed malicious smiles.
Machine-translated mockery began again.
Meanwhile, on screen, after annihilating the pursuers, Yuryu glanced at the unconscious players and said to the others,
"Let's keep moving."
The three continued forward.
But then, someone stopped them.
It was Fei Quan, who had watched the entire battle and was preparing to help if needed.
Fei Quan was inwardly shocked.
Seeing Yuryu's wary gaze, after calming his shock a bit, Fei Quan smiled faintly and took out an envelope.
"You're Kurosaki's friends, right?"
"Hello.
I met Kurosaki in the living world. So, could you deliver a letter for me?"
"Deliver a letter?"
Yuryu took the envelope.
By feel, there was no erasure fluctuation inside, meaning no tricks were played.
"How do you know Kurosaki?"
Yuryu Ishida inquired.
Haha, this.
Fabricating a friendship story, Fei Quan spoke readily. Soon, information about the 12th Division and Lande was delivered to Ichigo by the trio.
Ichigo's 20 billion game coins were almost digested. Next, it was time to help Lande. His trial was Ichigo. After Fei Quan sent off Yuryu and the others, the trio's trail completely vanished from the streams.
Like a mother worrying about a child traveling far, after sending off the trio, Ichigo's stream viewers all returned. But having walked around outside, they suddenly realized they couldn't understand what was happening in Ichigo's stream now.
Hold on, what happened? Why did they change opponents? And after changing, why did more people join? The completely confused viewers asked about Ichigo's situation.
Seeing people return, those who had been watching Ichigo's stream all along began to explain. Ichigo and Zaraki Kenpachi were slashing each other, but after fighting a while with no decisive outcome, each had wins and losses. So Ichigo took a risk. He used holification, relying on his He Arrow plus the blue glowing defensive ability on his skin, to take a direct slash from Zaraki Kenpachi while also giving Zaraki Kenpachi a slash. Ichigo, after taking Zaraki Kenpachi's slash, only temporarily lost use of his left hand, but Zaraki Kenpachi was completely knocked out.
That's how it is.
Seeing the explanation from the veteran who watched all along, everyone finally understood where the Zaraki lying before Unohana behind Ichigo came from. However, looking at Byakuya and Zaraki lying side by side before Unohana, and then Hitsugaya Toshiro arriving at the other end of the bridge, everyone couldn't hold back. Wait, two captains are already lying here.
Will Ichigo cut down all the captains here today? Damn, this Senzaku, though also white, isn't the 4th Division's hospital. But why do I feel Ichigo might actually cut down all these people here? That depends on whether Sister Hana still heals Ichigo or not. Everyone nervously watched Unohana. But this time, Unohana didn't help Ichigo. Such thing was understandable, helping once could be called incidental, but helping again. Which side's healer are you? Planning to defect? However, though Unohana only helped once, her assistance to Ichigo was immense.
Taking down Byakuya and Zaraki, two ace fighters of Suriaitis Gotii 13, only cost some stamina and a wound on his left shoulder.
Besides that, Ichigo's Ryuryoku remained quite intact. And his left hand being less usable wasn't a big issue because his upcoming battles would mostly require Bankai. His Bankai's single-handed sword could be wielded with one hand.
Thus, holding Zangetsu cleaver with one hand, Ichigo pointed forward, his expression as calm as a barber just finishing a haircut.
Next, who's coming? Merely a Ryoka. Seeing Ichigo's arrogance, the newly arrived Hitsugaya couldn't stand it.
Though the youngest, perhaps due to youth, Hitsugaya was among the captains with the strongest sense of responsibility and most serious work ethic.
Arriving to see Byakuya and Zaraki lying at Unohana's feet, even though he also didn't fully agree with Rukia's execution, for Suriaitis' dignity, Hitsugaya prepared to draw his sword. However, before Hitsugaya could step forward, Kamamura stopped him. Captain Hitsugaya, matters should follow order of arrival. Captain Kamamura, you. Stopped by Kamamura, Hitsugaya frowned slightly. He wanted to ask if Kamamura could handle it, but feared hurting his feelings. After all, Kamamura had never been a solo duelist, and currently Suriaitis' top solo fighters were already lying there. Seeing Hitsugaya's concern, Kamamura said, "It's fine, Captain Hitsugaya. Though we didn't see how Captain Kachiki lost, I saw how Kenpachi fell." Kamamura looked at Ichigo through his wooden helmet. "You see his Zanpakuto, right? It's a permanent release type. A Zanpakuto's appearance often indicates its nature. This Ryoka specializes in direct slashing, his attacks are broad and sweeping, and he has a special hollowification ability that greatly enhances his defense. Those with battlefield experience know that against heavy armor, you need heavy blunt weapons. So, I am confident in handling that Ryoka," Kamamura said. Hearing his words, Hitsugaya's frown eased slightly. He sighed. "I wanted to suggest we all go together, but the opponent is just one person, while we are many. It's already a wheel battle. If we all rush a single Ryoka, it would be too shameful. In that case, I'll rely on you, Captain Kamamura." HM. Nodding, Kamamura walked onto the 1v1 drawbridge. But at this moment, neither Kamamura nor Hitsugaya realized the seriousness of the situation. What power-type fighter? What broad and sweeping? Bankai Ichigo, I don't understand. Looking at the approaching Kamamura, Ichigo's mouth curved slightly. You're my next opponent? Not even showing your face, can you handle it? Humph. Snorting coldly, eyes under the helmet looking at Ichigo, Kamamura was displeased. Ryoka, don't be too arrogant. Don't think defeating two captains by luck makes you invincible. Let me tell you, there is always someone better, skies beyond skies. Roar, Tenken. After speaking, Kamamura directly entered Shirkai and swung his sword at Ichigo. Though he stood at the bridge's center, he swung at Ichigo from afar, seeming very odd. But the moment Kamamura swung, Ichigo became alert. Because Kamamura's Shirkai was many JoJo fans' favorite, a stand attack. Chapter 95, severely injuring Kamamura. Sure enough, the next moment, before Kamamura's body, a gigantic arm holding a 50-meter-long sword slashed at Ichigo. The massive blade combined with immense power, merely swinging it created strong wind pressure. The air seemed to become heavy like water, forming ripples. Also, large things look visually slow but are actually very fast. Just as it began swinging, Tenken's strike arrived right in front of Ichigo. Using only his right hand, Ichigo raised his sword, wanting to test Tenken's power. And then there was no then. Bang! A dull impact sound. Ichigo, like a home run baseball, created a sonic boom ring upon contact with Tenken and was sent flying heavily.
Due to the excessive force, Ichigo's flying body couldn't even form a parabolic arc in the air before crashing into the Senzaku wall, forming a human-shaped hole. Hanging for a while, Ichigo slowly slid down, falling in front of Rukia.
"Ichigo, are you okay?" Rukia asked anxiously. "Cough, I'm fine,"
Ichigo said, coughing blood, not looking fine at all. Seeing such an Ichigo, both Rukia and the live stream viewers were worried. But this time, Ichigo truly wasn't forcing it.
When he said he was fine, he really was.
The moment Zangetsu contacted Tenken, Ichigo realized this was absolutely not a force he could take head-on.
So Ichigo decisively used all his power for defense.
Though the visual of being sent flying was impressive, most of Kamamura's force was dissipated by Ichigo. Otherwise, instead of being sent flying, he would have been smashed into the ground, turning into a pulp. After spitting a mouthful of blood, Ichigo felt much better. But looking at Kamamura ahead, Ichigo had to marvel at the natural gift of this 2.8-meter-tall wolfman. Truly fierce. Ichigo thought of testing with Shirkai a bit more, but now, he had to use Bankai. At this moment, seeing Ichigo he sent flying could stand up normally, Kamamura's expression changed, and he swung again. The stand user's attack arrived. But now, Ichigo had already raised Zangetsu parallel to the ground. The powerful word was shouted. Bankai! A blue Ryuryoko pillar rising from his feet completely enveloped Ichigo. After a moment, the pillar dissipated, and Ichigo, holding Tensa Zangetsu, wearing a sleek black coat, reappeared.
The Bankai's name was calmly spoken from his mouth, Tensa Zangetsu. Simultaneously, Kamamura's attack fully arrived before Ichigo.
But disdainfully glancing at Kamamura's stand, Ichigo instantly vanished from the spot.
The next second, Ichigo's Tensa Zangetsu clashed with Kamamura's Tenken.
Kamamura, suddenly finding Ichigo before him, couldn't react in time, instinctively slashing forward. A kanatsu similar to Zaraki's sword attack appeared from the slender Tenken. Then, the rumbling kanatsu pierced the air ahead. The air surged forward like a great wave. But the air surging forward precisely indicated Ichigo was no longer there.
Thud! Kamamura suddenly felt pain in his back.
"You bastard!"
In pain, Kamamura angrily swung backhanded.
But immediately, Tensa Zangetsu flashed, and his left hand hurt again.
"Bastard!" Following Ryatsu sensing, Kamamura reached to grab Ichigo.
But the next moment, a crisp impact sounded on his left hand's armor.
A not too great force slapped Kamamura's left hand back.
Just a blur to the eyes, and a deep sword mark appeared on Kamamura's left hand armor.
Yet even so, Kamamura could only see black afterimages flitting before his eyes.
"Damn it, bastard!" The continuously pained Kamamura's eyes reddened.
Still in Shirkai, this time, both arms of Tenken were projected by Kamamura. Around himself, Kamamura swept forcefully.
Heavy force stirred wind in clouds. The screech of air friction against the two large arms was constant. But even with indiscriminate attacks around himself, Kamamura hit nothing. Looking closely, after launching a series of attacks, Ichigo had already returned to where he originally stood. If not for the blood slowly dripping from his sword tip, one might not realize Ichigo had attacked. Only then did the live stream viewers realize. Brothers, Ichigo's Bankai seems to counter the 7th Division's captain.
The opponent's attack is indeed strong, but no matter how strong the attack, if its attack range is short, it can't hit. Simultaneously, after consecutive setbacks, Kamamura also realized. He looked unhappily at Ichigo. Your Shirkai is that form, with fighting style as Zaraki Kenpachi's, but after Bankai, you actually rely on speed to fight? A Shinigami's Shirkai reflects the outer personality, while Bankai materializes the inner personality. Kamamura had seen Shinigami whose Shirkai and Bankai are two different faces, but he never expected Ichigo's Shirkai to be so unrestrained, yet that wasn't even his true personality. Hearing this, Ichigo smiled, guessed right, but no prize. His Bankai was incomplete, so the power wasn't manifested. With both power and speed at A rank, if power is gone, only speed remains, right? Then, Ichigo's sinister, metallic voice came from behind Kamamura again. It's also wrong, but there is a prize.
The prize is more slashes. And the moment Ichigo spoke, Kamamura felt a chill in his chest. He looked down to see a black blade tip already protruding from his chest. He just blinked, maybe not even blinked, and Ichigo was behind him again. On the black blade tip, droplets of crimson blood fell. Seeing this, Kamamura's eyes contracted. His words upon entering the battlefield echoed in his heart. His very traditional oath of loyalty and righteousness. Kamamura felt immense humiliation. Even with a tribute disadvantage, being taken out by Ichigo like this was too shameful. Then, Kamamura fiercely gripped the protruding Tensa Zangetsu blade with his right hand. Bastard! Roaring, Kamamura slammed his left elbow backward. This time, Ichigo was inevitably struck squarely. The recently closed wound on his left shoulder immediately tore open, gushing blood onto Kamamura's captain's Haori. His entire left side felt torn apart, excruciating pain. But even enduring such pain, Ichigo gritted his teeth. Because he knew if he didn't stop Kamamura's attack immediately, the next strike would finish him. Thus, on Tensa Zangetsu's slender blade, black Ryuryoku flames ignited. A small Getsuga Tensho exploded. Right in the center of Kamamura's chest, as if a hollow hole appeared, a large black void formed. However, this wasn't a hollow hole, but Kamamura's flesh consumed by Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho explosion. Arg! Having a Getsuga Tensho detonate inside him, even a tough man like Kamamura couldn't help but cry out. The round-ending battle left everyone breathless. Just one exchange, after Ichigo's Bankai, without Kamamura even using his Bankai, he was severely injured. Seeing the small hole from Kamamura's back to his chest, Tozen could no longer stand still. Kamamura! Drawing Suzumushi, Tozen shunput forward, intending to directly intervene and rescue. But the raised Suzumushi, before it could fall, was already frozen. Chapter 96 Facing Tozen. Supporting the limp Kamamura with his body, Ichigo placed Tensa Zangetsu against his neck. Don't come any closer. Ichigo threatened Tozen. Damn it, Kamamura. Tozen anxiously looked at Kamamura. He might follow Aizen, but Kamamura was indeed a friend he acknowledged. Seeing his friend severely injured, Tozen was extremely worried. At this moment, Kamamura still retained a sliver of consciousness. Even with blood gushing like an open spring from his chest, upon seeing Tozen, Kamamura still tried to grab Ichigo forcefully, to create an opportunity for his friend. If you're like this, then just stay put. Instantly sheathing and drawing his sword, Ichigo pierced Kamamura's right shoulder collarbone with Tensa Zangetsu. Then, before Tozen could charge recklessly forward, Ichigo, with several consecutive shunpa, brought Kamamura to Anohana's side. Seeing this, Hitsugaya, who had been watching the whole time, was puzzled. Why did he feel that Ichigo was more urgent about Kamamura than Tozen? The moment Ichigo returned, Unohana took Kamamura. Why is the injury so severe? Unohana said helplessly. Even after being a physician for so many years, looking at the hollow hole in Kamamura's chest gave her a headache. From this hole, she could almost see Kamamura's heart, lungs, spine, and other vital structures. One could say, if Ichigo's hand had been slightly off, Kamamura would have been gone. Hearing Anohana's words, Ichigo was also helpless, no choice, he was too fierce. To subdue him quickly, I had to do this. Ichigo originally planned to use speed to drain his blood, but who knew Kamamura would just go for a life or death struggle? Giving Ichigo an exasperated look, Anohana's expression turned serious as she placed her hand over Kamamura's chest. After treating for a while and noticing Ichigo still watching anxiously, Unohana helplessly chided, "Alright, go on, continue." Seeing the always dignified and gentle Sister Hana show such an expression, the viewers couldn't hold back. "Sister Hana, go on, I want to see how many captains you can cut down today." "Sister Hana, these captains, I usually can't even see their shadows." "Good, now they're all lying before me." "First floor, get out of the bookstore, understood?" Damn, brothers, not joking, Ichigo really seems about to defy the world today. Pohaha, did you see Rukia's expression? I feel Rukia probably never dreamed of this scene, right?
Of course. Who would think that a random male high schooler I picked up in an emergency would come in and cut down all the captains? I can't stop laughing.
Simultaneously, Ichigo seemed to have a telepathic connection as he looked at Rukia. Currently, Rukia's expression was somewhat strange. Her rapidly changing expressions made Ichigo laugh. Don't worry, I said I'd take you away, and I will. If not today, then definitely another day. Rukia shyly lowered her head. Now, she would no longer question any of Ichigo's words. Honestly, if there really was a man who, in a fit of rage for his beloved, could fight from Suriaidi's main gate all the way to the Senzeikyū, slashing left and right without blinking, cutting down 3 captains along the way and preparing to continue, then such a man, why not marry him immediately? Keep him around to stage palace dramas with those seductive bitches? If only Rukia could go out now, otherwise. Slightly lowering her head, Rukia hid her eyes that were almost turning into heart shapes. At this moment, Ichigo still had no idea what Rukia was thinking. He turned back to look at the bridge. Tozen, after seeing Ichigo promptly send Kamamura for medical treatment, stood there quietly waiting. Ichigo used Shuunpa to return. Seeing Ichigo return, Tozen, who had waited for a while, coldly spoke. Earlier, Captain Hitsugaya wanted to attack together with me. I refused. Because honestly, I admire you. Oh? Ichigo raised his eyes to look at Tozen, indicating he was willing to listen. And Tozen didn't actually seek Ichigo's prompting, he continued. To fight your way into the Soul Society for the woman you love and come this far, I admire your courage. Because in a way, Tozen was also such a person, but on the surface, he hid this well. Unfortunately, you broke into the Soul Society, defeated many captains, disrupted Suriai's order, and that holification is undoubtedly a demonic power. You are destined to become a source of chaos. So, I will defeat you here. Rest assured, for Kamamura's sake, I won't kill you. I'll send you to Captain Unohana for treatment. After speaking, Tozen held Suzamushi upright, his left hand gripping the ring hanging from Suzamushi's hilt. Before the comments in Ichigo's stream from viewers who were already getting carried away could type, "This guy is quite arrogant," the ring on Tozen's Suzamushi spun rapidly, emitting a sound extremely similar to a cricket's chirp. Then, Suzamushi's ring expanded, and expanded again, like the Sorcerer Supreme's sparking rings, large enough to encircle a person. Only then did Tozen begin the incantation, Bankai. The huge ring quickly replicated itself 9 times, then was flung out by Tozen. 9 rings encircled Ichigo and Tozen. Then, from the ring's centers, a dark space was born. As if entering Byakuya's Senkei again, a confined space surrounded Ichigo, Suzamushi Tsuashiki, and Makurogi. Only then was Tozen's Bankai name spoken. This is my Bankai. This space is my Bankai. How about it, Kurosaki Ichigo? I said I'd send you to Captain Unohana for treatment. I wasn't boasting. Tozen paced forward, a slight smirk on his lips as he arrived behind Ichigo. Then, he turned and said, "Ah, I forgot you can't hear anymore. This space will strip all things within it of their Ryatsu. Sense of touch, hearing, smell, sight, creating a realm of utter darkness. And only one person can escape this hell. That is the one holding the blade Suzamushi, me. How is it? A hell where you can't see or hear, quite terrifying, right?" Tozen said. But as he spoke, he shook his head. Words destined to receive no response, why bother saying them every time? However, Tozen didn't know that while this space was a realm of utter darkness, Ichigo's livestream wasn't blocked. Hearing Tozen's words from start to finish, the livestream viewers were also shocked by such a Bankai. Can't see anything, can't hear anything. How to break out of this situation? It's over, brothers. This time, Ichigo is really in trouble. Any brothers skilled in jinxing? Help! The comments were filled with lamentation. However, summoning gods takes time. And now, after silently savoring the moment for a while, Tozen, standing behind Ichigo, had already sneak attacked from the same position, just like when Ichigo attacked Kamamura. Swish! A clear sword light flashed within Enma Kurogi.
Chapter 97 Breaking Suzumushi Tsuashiki.
Facing Tozen's straightforward sneak attack, Ichigo only felt pain in his back. And by the time he turned around and swung Tensa Zangetsu, Tozen was no longer there. However, Ichigo had been charging a Getsuga Tensho since entering. Although his slash didn't hit Tozen, Ichigo fired his maximum output Getsuga Tensho. Within the confined Enma Kurogi space, wind and clouds stirred.
With momentum to cleave everything, Getsuga Tensho rushed towards the barrier's edge. How about it? Can it break this barrier?
No matter how strong this Enma Kurogi is, as long as the barrier is broken, it should naturally dissipate, right? Watching this Getsuga Tensho, Ichigo's live stream viewers were full of anticipation.
But something they could think of, how could Tozen not?
The imposing Getsuga Tensho rushed towards the barrier's edge, but for some reason, from the edges of the black crescent, continuously, specks of shining rapier floated out.
In the dark Enma Kurogi, these rapier flew towards the barrier's edges like fireflies.
Advancing all the way, scattering fireflies all the way, the Getsuga Tensho finally struck the barrier wall. But this time, Ichigo's ever-victorious Getsuga Tensho simply, ordinarily, burst apart on the barrier wall into even more fireflies. Seeing this, Tozen sneered coldly.
Useless. In this space, all externalized Ryatsu will be absorbed by Enma Kurogi. Even I cannot use Kido here, only sword techniques decide victory.
Your move is strong, but having its Ryatsu absorbed by Enma Kurogi, by the time it hits the barrier, its power has diminished to a certain degree.
The barrier's strength also includes part of your Ryatsu.
So you're using your own attack against your own defense. Meanwhile, in front of Tozen, Ichigo was deep in thought.
Because Enma Kurogi stripped all senses, he didn't know the result of his Getsuga Tensho. But Ichigo could guess the result probably wasn't good, because his darkness remained undisturbed.
Then, Ichigo suddenly remembered why Enma Kurogi made him unable to see or hear. Because this space absorbed all rapier, similar to how sound cannot travel in a vacuum, and there was no light, so you couldn't see. If so, then his Getsuga Tensho should also have dissipated mid-air. That meant in this space, only sword duels were possible, just like Tozen's battle with Zaraki. The solution I previously thought of couldn't be used, it seemed I had to use Zaraki's method.
And Tozen's attack patterns.
Thinking, Ichigo suddenly swung his sword to the left.
Clang! A bit of collision force came from Tensa Zangetsu. Tensa Zangetsu had struck Suzumushi.
Noticing this, Ichigo immediately increased his power. But immediately, Tozen, who retained clear perception of everything, deftly changed his sword's path. The long sword slid along Tensa Zangetsu's blade, parried Tensa Zangetsu, then slashed Ichigo's chest again. Then, retreating to create distance, Tozen looked at Ichigo, who remained unaware in place, and showed a hint of realization.
So that's it. You figured out my attack sequence on you is the same as your attack sequence on my friend, so you made a prediction?
Very clever, but not enough. After speaking, not waiting long like the previous attack, Tozen appeared at Ichigo's right side, slashing at his waist.
Ugh!
Ichigo groaned, holding his waist. Then, Ichigo gathered rapier and injected it into his blood, activating Blood Vene to stop the bleeding from his wounds.
And unfortunately, Blood Vene was an active defense. It could enhance defense in a specific area before the user was attacked.
But if you didn't know where you'd be attacked, unless you were wealthy enough to defend your entire body, Blood Vene's defense was useless. It could only be used to stop bleeding.
Admittedly, Ichigo's situation was truly dangerous now.
Before entering, he never anticipated this. Hollow Ichigo was indeed a trump card, but if Hollow Ichigo rampages, he'd lose consciousness, and currently, Ichigo didn't want that. Also, his injuries weren't as many as Zaraki's, nor did he have Zaraki's terrifying combat instinct. So relying on instinct to capture Tozen was difficult.
To defeat Tozen using Zaraki's method, it seemed he had to take some risks.
Then, under Tozen's surprised gaze, Ichigo suddenly released Tensa Zangetsu, plunging it into the ground before him as if giving up.
Kurosaki Ichigo, what trick are you trying now? Tozen was a bit curious, so he directly went behind Ichigo and slashed horizontally. Swish! The back of the black coat was easily sliced open by Tozen's Suzamushi, blood flowing. But this time, Ichigo's blood just started flowing before he stopped it with blood veine. Simultaneously, the moment he was struck, Ichigo drew Tensa Zangetsu and slashed a brilliant sword light behind him. Rip! The sharp Tensa Zangetsu cut through Tozen's wide sleeve. Looking at the falling sleeve fragment, Tozen understood. So that's it. You're focusing all perception on your body, hoping to counterattack the moment you're wounded? Because you have that special technique that can strengthen your skin, naturally it can also stop bleeding, giving you the capital for prolonged battle. Tozen understood Ichigo's idea, or thought he did. He shook his head, not a bad idea, and commendable courage. The problem is, as a captain, if you can react after I strike first, then I shouldn't be a captain. After speaking, as if intentionally torturing Ichigo, Tozen circled around him, Suzamushi constantly swinging. After just a small circle, Ichigo was already covered in blood, and even blood veine was struggling to stop the bleeding. Swish, swish. Severe injuries and stamina depletion made Ichigo half kneel on the ground. He had been slashed 8 times and had drawn his sword 8 times. But aside from the first draw, the subsequent rapid slashes all hit air. Performing a focused draw slash 8 times in a row would exhaust even an Iron Man. Plus being slashed so many times, Ichigo merely half kneeling without collapsing was already very strong. At least the observing Tozen admired Ichigo's vitality and fighting will. In that case, I'll give you the final strike. I'm not someone who takes pleasure in torturing others. Tozen went behind Ichigo. His sword tip aimed at the center of Ichigo's back. But he didn't know this was precisely the effect Ichigo wanted from this act, or rather, his ruse of feigning injury. Squelch! Suzamushi's tip pierced Ichigo's back, then emerged from his chest. Crimson blood slowly dripped from the bright white blade. But just like Kamamura grabbing Tensa Zangetsu, Ichigo also suddenly grabbed the piercing Suzamushi. His hand, with blood veine activated, was like a hydraulic iron clamp. Instantly, Ichigo's world became clear. Words tinged with laughter entered Tozen's ears. So, in this space, you just need to hold your sword to see, right? You. Seeing Ichigo so keenly grasp his blade, Tozen was shocked. But quickly, he composed himself. Correct, holding my sword lets you see. The problem is, with only one usable hand, even if you grab my sword, what can you do? Saying this, Tozen flicked his wrist. Suzamushi, along with his wrist, twisted within Ichigo's chest. Intense pain assaulted Ichigo's mind. Enduring the pain, Ichigo's words squeezed through clenched teeth. Indeed, I only have one usable hand. But the problem is, my other hand can attack you without needing to move. After speaking, Ichigo suddenly tilted his head. Simultaneously, a flash of light burst into everyone's vision. Chapter 98: The Cunning Jin. He struggled to form a pistol gesture with his hand pointing backward, and at this moment, a small bow had clearly taken shape on Ichigo's hand, with a small arrow knocked. Is this a Quincy technique? Tozen realized in surprise. Dead memories suddenly attacked him. He remembered many years ago, a woman named Kurosaki Masaki defeated Hollow White with such a technique. At that time, he was extremely ashamed because Hollow White was so easily defeated. But now, this handbow technique appeared before him again, aimed at him. Tozen was enraged. Damn it, how could I suffer from the same move twice? Tozen shook Suzamushi even more violently, wanting to pull the sword from Ichigo's chest. The problem was he faced the same predicament as Ichigo earlier. That is, the sword was held firmly, and he didn't have a skill like Getsuga Tensho that could detonate inside the body. Moreover, in this space, he could give up anything, but never Suzamushi. Thus, Tozen could only watch helplessly as Ichigo aimed and charged. Then, feeling he had charged to a level that could still severely injure someone even after being weakened by Enma Kurogi, Ichigo released the arrow. A dazzling light instantly struck Tozen's chest. Boom! Hit by Ichigo's ultra-small moonlight arrow, just like Ichigo taking Tenken's slash, Tozen was sent flying heavily backward.
Simultaneously, the dark space of Enma Kurogi shattered.
When Ichigo and Tozen reappeared before everyone, what greeted them was a shocking scene.
Ichigo half-kneeled on the ground, Suzumushi embedded in his chest, flowing blood pooling beneath his knees, forming a small stream. And Tozen lay heavily fallen not far behind Ichigo. He was supine, blood gushing from his mouth like a spring, his entire chest caved in as if hit by a car, broken ribs piercing internal organs, more air exhaled than inhaled. Seeing this, Unohana, who had been leisurely treating the other three captains, had to shunpa to Tozen's front, immediately stabilizing Tozen's injuries. Then with another shunpa, Unohana brought Tozen to lie beside the other three captains, all in a row. Only then did Unohana discover multiple organ ruptures and severe internal bleeding within Tozen's body. Without exaggeration, if she weren't here today, Tozen would have died on the spot within a minute. This young man. Unohana glanced at Ichigo in astonishment, a strong desire to nurture talent rising in her heart. Defeating 4 captains in succession, even with her healing assistance, was an astonishing feat. Such a peerless fierce man, even Unohana, the original Kenpachi, hadn't encountered in a long time. If this were 1,000 years ago, she would absolutely have to get Ichigo into the 11th division, make him her lieutenant, then lock him in a small darkroom every day to accompany her inventing desires.
Unohana looked at Rukia beside her and asked, "That young man, is he called Kurosaki Ichigo, right?"
Rukia nodded, gazing infatuatedly at Ichigo's back, immensely proud.
Ha! Ignoring the love-struck Rukia, Unohana looked at Ichigo and said gently, "Ichigo, that's enough. Come receive treatment. You've proven yourself. With your strength, the captain commander will definitely seriously reconsider Rukia's sentence." Hearing Unohana's words, before Ichigo could even respond, the live stream comments erupted. "Ha ha, commit crimes then receive amnesty, the ancients didn't lie. Yeah, as captain commander, facing such a tough character who cut down 4 captains, wouldn't you want to recruit him? Speaking of which, Ichigo has finally made it through. I never thought Ichigo would actually do it. Truly fierce. Gotta say, indeed. Rukia-chan has no regrets now. Fast forward to the wedding, please." Everyone discussed Ichigo's future. However, perhaps only Ichigo himself knew he absolutely could not be recruited. If he, a Ryoka who disrupted the Soul Society's situation, was recruited, what would be left for Aizen? Standing up somewhat unsteadily, Ichigo prepared for battle. "You, still want to fight?" Looking at Ichigo ahead, Hitsugaya's expression was puzzled. "Yeah, Kurosaki Ichigo, enough. Rukia definitely doesn't want you to continue fighting either." After Hitsugaya spoke, Ranjiku also spoke up to persuade. But looking at the two from the 10th division ahead, Ichigo just faintly shook his head. "Hey, haven't you noticed? It's not about whether I want to fight, but whether you want to fight." Saying this, after many battles, Ichigo's sharp eyes swept over Ranjiku and Hitsugaya. Swept by Ichigo's sharp gaze, Ranjiku tensed up, startled, but based on her friendship with Rukia, she still asked, "We want to fight?" The captain and I naturally support Rukia. "The fight is over, Kurosaki Ichigo," Ranjiku said. Looking at the blood-soaked Ichigo, a touch of emotion also appeared in Ranjiku's eyes. "It's enough, Kurosaki Ichigo. You've done enough for Rukia." However, no matter what Ranjiku said, neither Ichigo nor Hitsugaya responded, as if not hearing. Ranjiku found it strange. Only then did she realize Ichigo's gaze swept past her and Hitsugaya, not looking at them. Ichigo was looking behind them. Suddenly sensing a somewhat familiar Ryatsu, Ranjiku turned to look behind. Sure enough, that familiar fox-like smiling face appeared before her eyes again. "Jin!" Ranjiku called. Hearing Ranjiku call his name, Jin's fox-like smile became slightly more genuine, though imperceptibly. However, for what was taken from Ranjiku, he couldn't be honest about his feelings now. "Please call me Captain Ikamaru, Lieutenant Ranjiku." "And who told you we could recruit Ryoka?" "The orders we received were always only to apprehend or kill." Saying this, Jin smiled at everyone. "Or are you planning to defy the Captain Commander's orders?" Ikamaru Jin, you.
Hearing Jin's words, Hitsugaya gritted his teeth angrily.
But precisely because the captain commander was invoked, they couldn't refute.
However, Hitsugaya was no pushover either. Taking 2 steps toward Jin, Hitsugaya said forcefully,
I will explain to the captain commander.
We've already lost 4 captains.
We can't afford more losses. Let the fighting end here. I'll bear all consequences.
Hitsugaya's words made the live stream audience, who had become worried again upon Jin's arrival, feel reassured.
Well said, little Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya is indeed a good person. Everyone cheered for him. But what a fox Jin was. He easily seized the flaw in Hitsugaya's words. We've already lost 4 captains, so we can't afford more losses. Hee, Captain Hitsugaya, are you saying we captains of Suriitii are cowards who fear death? Jin asked pointedly. Then, before Hitsugaya could retort, Jin interrupted. Or does Captain Hitsugaya think Suriitii's dignity is worth only that much? With such concessions, how will you face the 4 fallen captains before you? Weren't they fighting for Suriitii's dignity against the Ryoka? Faced with Jin's interrogation, Hitsugaya fell silent. Undoubtedly, the cunning fox Jin had cornered Hitsugaya. But then, Hitsugaya suddenly recalled the questioning of Jin by Aizen when the captains' meeting adjourned earlier. Aizen believed the entire Ryoka invasion was manipulated by Jin. Otherwise, the timing couldn't be so coincidental, just resolving Jin's predicament. Now, after watching, Hitsugaya felt Ichigo wasn't directed by Jin, but someone was definitely using Ichigo and the others behind the scenes, wanting to achieve ulterior motives. And this person was very likely Jin.
Chapter 99. A single sword once blocked 1,000,000 troops. He gave Jin a deep look and said calmly, Captain Ikamaru, you should know I don't mean that. Facing Hitsugaya's probing gaze, Jin's fake smile didn't change.
He. Of course I know Captain Hitsugaya just doesn't want further conflict. In that case, let me be the one to step forward and slay this Ryoka. Don't worry, my blade is fast. He won't feel much pain.
Saying this, Jin prepared to pass Hitsugaya and walk onto the bridge. But hearing Jin's last sentence, Hitsugaya finally understood Jin's intention.
He wanted to silence and destroy evidence.
Realizing this, Hitsugaya's pupils contracted, then he stepped forward forcefully, blocking Jin's path. With his back to Jin, Hitsugaya slightly turned his head, showing a profile, and spoke the words Kamamura had said earlier, Captain Ikamaru, you should also respect order of arrival. I was here first, so I should act first.
Ha!
Hearing Hitsugaya's words, Jin smiled slightly. Then, he said nothing more, just silently gestured for Hitsugaya to proceed. Thus, the 5th captain in this will battle, captain of the 10th Division of Suriitii's Gotii 13, Hitsugaya Toshiro, entered the fray. Taking a deep breath, Hitsugaya stood at the bridge's center. After the consecutive battles, the wooden drawbridge connecting the Senzaku to Suriitii's structures was already on the verge of collapse. Just a few steps caused significant swaying, constant creaking of wood friction, making one suspect the bridge might give way any second. However, the 2 on the bridge, both Hitsugaya and Ichigo, remained expressionless. Looking at Ichigo, Hitsugaya said, Surrender, Kurosaki Ichigo. After fighting 4 captains consecutively, you absolutely cannot defeat me. Surrender, and I, Hitsugaya Toshiro, guarantee your life. After speaking, Hitsugaya looked expectantly at Ichigo. His expression sincere, eyes serious, coupled with his small boy physique yet precocious demeanor, Hitsugaya's promise was absolutely trustworthy. Ichigo. Watching this, even the live stream comments gradually disappeared. Everyone held their breath, waiting for Ichigo's decision, not daring to make a sound. Yet, under the gaze of all, Ichigo didn't speak, but faintly smiled and shook his head, raising Tensa Zangetsu toward Hitsugaya. Clearly, Ichigo would fight to the end. Surrender was for cowards. Ah, so that's your choice. Looking at such an Ichigo, Hitsugaya murmured softly. He slightly lowered his head, then raised it. When Hitsugaya looked up again, all hesitation in his eyes was replaced with battle decisiveness.
Even for Ichigo's sake, he couldn't hold back in this fight. Only defeating Ichigo fastest, letting him rest, was the greatest respect for Ichigo. Thus, Hitsugaya drew Hyarinmaru, gripped it with both hands, adjusted his stance. Powerful captain-level Ryatsu erupted. He was ready for battle. Watching this, today's livestream atmosphere reached its peak. Who else? I ask, who the hell else? For love, enraged, battling 5 captains consecutively, who else can be as badass as Ichigo? Brothers, I'm going to widen my eyes, watch today's battle intently. Then engrave it deep into my memory. I dare say, this will be a memorable scene we'll remember no matter how many years pass. Just for Ichigo's unwavering fighting spirit, brothers, everyone stand up. This is precisely. Alone, he fought across 3,000 miles, a single sword once blocked 1,000,000 troops. Dense comments flooded the screen. Like witnessing an explosive rock music moment, everyone passionately expressed their emotions. In such an atmosphere, blood-boiling people didn't even know what to say, just spamming exclamation marks. Clearly, Ichigo's battle today left everyone astonished. As that person said earlier, alone, he fought across 3,000 miles, a single sword once blocked 1,000,000 troops. But just as the livestream audience expressed their emotions and thoughts, in the duel with Hitsugaya, Ichigo moved first. Getsuga Tensho. A black crescent slashed toward Hitsugaya. Simultaneously, Hitsugaya initiated Shurkai. Sit upon the frozen heavens, Hyarinmaru. An ice water dragon flew from Hitsugaya's sword, heading straight for the Getsuga Tensho. Crash. Crescent and ice dragon collided. The imposing Getsuga Tensho cleaved the ice dragon's head but vanished at its body. And in Shurkai form, Hyarinmaru released ultra-low temperature pure water. Such pure water wouldn't freeze normally and would freeze upon mixing with impurities, i.e., contacting other things. Thus, the ice water dragon, after its form broke, dissipated and fell, transforming into surging waves rushing toward Ichigo. Along the way, the drawbridge froze. Hyarinmaru's extremely cold pure water even froze up to before Ichigo's feet. Instantly, a water path appeared before Ichigo. Treading this ice path, Hitsugaya charged at high speed. With his slightly shorter stature, he wielded Hyarinmaru in an upward slash. Boom! Ichigo parried with his sword. Tensa Zangetsu and Hyarinmaru's blades scraped out sparks. Due to his body not fully grown, Hitsugaya's strength wasn't great. In the contest of strength, Ichigo, with one hand on his sword, gradually gained the upper hand. But then, he suddenly felt coldness transmitted from his hand. Boom! Forcing Hitsugaya away, Ichigo leaped back several times to create distance. Only then did he discover, from where Tensa Zangetsu and Hyarinmaru collided, continuous frost spread, quickly freezing both Tensa Zangetsu and Ichigo's right hand together. The frozen area extended from his palm all the way to his elbow. Can it do this? Looking at his completely frozen hand, Ichigo tried using strength. However, Hyarinmaru's ice was extremely hard. No matter how much force Ichigo used, his entire frozen right hand was immobile, as if bound. Watching Ichigo frantically shaking his right hand, Hitsugaya calmly said, "Useless, Kurosaki Ichigo. Near my home, there's a river with many crocodiles. Their bite force is terrifying, but if you tie their mouths with rope, no matter how terrifying the bite force, the crocodile cannot move. A human hand is the same. Without being able to use your sword, you've lost. Surrender." Oh, is that so? Looking at his ice-sealed arm, Ichigo tried again. Indeed, it couldn't move. It wasn't that the ice was particularly hard, but his hand couldn't exert force. Then, Ichigo used Chuunpa to the Senzaku edge and slammed his ice-sealed right hand against the Senzaku wall. Only a loud boom was heard. Even the killer stone composing the Sekiseki was marked by Ichigo, but the ice on his hand remained. Looking at Hitsugaya ahead, Ichigo found his gaze was calm, clearly having anticipated this result. The only weakness of this ice sealing technique was from inside, but the person inside couldn't exert force with their hand, so breaking it was difficult. Shaking his head, Hitsugaya prepared to advance further. If Ichigo still refused to surrender, he'd freeze his entire body. But then, Hitsugaya suddenly froze. Chapter 100: Hitsugaya throwing the fight? At this time, on the middle finger of Ichigo's right hand, a dazzling white light began to gather. This was the finger flick taught to Ichigo by Isshin. His physical body indeed couldn't break through, but he could use a tiny amount of Ryuryoku to condense extremely high Ryatsu on his fingertip, then explosively release it. This way, the Ryuryoku usage was low, causing minimal harm to the hand, but the Ryatsu was high, capable of touching and breaking Hyarinmaru's ice seal. Thus, with a tap, the solid ice seal was shattered by Ichigo's finger flick. This is... Watching this scene, both Hitsugaya and Ranjuku were stunned. Hitsugaya's memory suddenly flashed back decades. Back then, the 10th Division's lieutenant was still Ranjuku, but the captain was Isshin, and he was just a third seat. During a sparring session, an excited Hitsugaya showed Isshin a new move he had developed. Isshin, with his hand frozen, stubbornly refused to use his Zanpakuto's ability to dispel it. He went to work with his right hand frozen like that, while pondering hard. Then, a day later, Isshin found Hitsugaya again and demonstrated this finger flick technique. Ha, I got the inspiration from Byakurai. Your ice seal is good, but if I concentrate a point inside and cause an explosion, your ice is completely useless. How about it, Toshiro? Impressive, right? Isshin laughed heartily. TCH. Hitsugaya of that time clicked his tongue in displeasure. He was very unhappy that his move had been countered. However, not long after that sparring session, Hitsugaya received the news that Isshin had gone missing during a mission in the living world. Although the 10th Division's captain and lieutenant were both unreliable, leaving all the work to him, the third seat. Undoubtedly, the days with a bold and hardy captain, a beautiful and gentle lieutenant, where he only needed to worry about division's affairs, were simple and wonderful. Unfortunately, when Isshin disappeared, everything fell apart. Hitsugaya had to take up his still immature Bankai and assume the position of captain of the 10th Division, once again sheltering the division from wind and rain. But since then, Hitsugaya had never given up paying attention to news about Isshin. Who would have thought he'd see it here? Looking at Ichigo, who had broken the ice seal on his palm, Hitsugaya's eyes held a complex emotion. He suddenly asked, speaking of which, Kurosaki Ichigo, I never asked what your Zanpakuto's ability is. Like my Hyarinmaru is an ice-type Zanpakuto, capable of controlling weather, releasing cold air and ice crystals. What about yours? What's your Zanpakuto's name? Ha? Ichigo tilted his head, not sure why Hitsugaya suddenly asked this. But it wasn't anything shameful, so he said directly, my Zanpakuto is called Zangetsu. It's a direct/type Zanpakuto, and its ability is only one, Getsuga Tensho. I can condense powerful Ryatsu on the blade and release a powerful slash. Why do you ask? Ichigo inquired. No, it's nothing. Hitsugaya shook his head. At the same time, he looked at Ichigo's face and asked again, has Rukia ever told you that you resemble someone? That person, Shibakayan, was already gone by the time Hitsugaya entered the Seriidii, but that didn't stop him from knowing about him. As one of the top prodigies from the Shino Academy, and a prodigy from not too long ago, the two were often compared. Hitsugaya hadn't remembered earlier, but after recalling the matter of Isshin, he now remembered. The more he looked at Ichigo now, the more Ichigo seemed to resemble Kayan. She hasn't mentioned that, but Kukaku did say I resemble her brother. Ichigo replied. Hitsugaya, Kukaku? Shiba Kukaku. I see. Hitsugaya nodded. This way, he fully understood. Calculating the time, it indeed seemed about right. Then, to Ichigo's surprise, Hitsugaya raised Hyarinmaru before his eyes. After asking those inexplicable questions, Hitsugaya directly entered his second release form. A bone-chilling Ryatsu erupted. Bankai Daigurin Hyarinmaru. The next moment, Hitsugaya appeared before Ichigo, with wings on his back, a dragon tail, and 3 ice flowers adorning his wings. Immediately after, Hitsugaya launched a fierce assault. Guncho Tsurara. T/N, Icicle Birds. Swinging Hyarinmaru, a dense barrage of ice bullets, like a flock of birds, shot towards Ichigo. Seeing this, Ichigo could no longer speculate. Amidst the dense hail of ice bullets from Hitsugaya, Ichigo dodged left and right. The ice bullets landed around him, blooming into ice flowers on the ground. But no matter how dense the barrage, Ichigo moved through them untouched, like an excellent Toho player. However, after dodging for a while, Ichigo sensed something was off. Why were the gaps between these ice bullets so large? As everyone knows, dodging well is not as good as having the bullets perfectly outline your body. Hitsugaya's ice bullets were exactly like that. On the bridge, Ichigo's dodging space should have been very limited. Yet Hitsugaya's area of effect fire seemed to be grazing Ichigo. If there was even a slight mistake, it wouldn't have missed entirely. And this wasn't just one wave, but 3 consecutive waves of ice bullets, pushing Ichigo all the way to the front of the Sokayaku Hill, away from the suspension bridge. After carpet bombing the area, Hitsugaya was panting heavily, while Ichigo's injuries remained exactly as they were before. Seeing this, the live stream audience, who had been very worried about Ichigo at first, typed 3 question marks. Something's off, Hitsugaya-kun's aim seems a bit questionable? Right? If he had just missed a little, he would have hit long ago. What's going on? Everyone was very puzzled. But at this point, they just thought Ichigo was performing well, or Hitsugaya wasn't at his best. However, Hitsugaya's next move was utterly indefensible. Seeing Ichigo dodge his ice bullets, Hitsugaya said with great astonishment, "Well done." As expected of a Ryoka who defeated 4 captains in a row. You really have some skill. Then, how about this? After saying this, Hitsugaya once again gathered a large amount of Ryatsu on Hyarinmaru. Senin Hyero. T/N, 1000-year ice prison. A circular freezing slash was unleashed. Hyarinmaru would freeze everything along the path of its blade tip, successfully freezing the air. Then, seeing Ichigo dodge the Senin Hyero, Hitsugaya immediately changed tactics. Senin Hyero, Zeku. T/N, 1000-year ice prison, void sever. Hyarinmaru slid, and an ice pillar brushed past Ichigo from the left, crashing into the Sokayaku Hill. Looking at Ichigo, who hadn't moved from his spot the entire time, Hitsugaya made a displeased expression. Damn it! So you predicted I would attack from the left and simply didn't move? What a formidable Ryoka! Then, how about this? Saying this, Hitsugaya's body once again gathered a massive amount of Ryuryoku. His icy wings flapped, and Hitsugaya rushed towards Ichigo at high speed, with freezing energy condensed on Hyarinmaru's tip. Ryusenka. T/N, Hailflower Dragon. Boom! A huge cross-shaped ice crystal exploded. However, this move also missed. And at this moment, under everyone's strange gaze, Hitsugaya's clumsy acting was finally seen through. Because Ichigo had simply jumped back once and done nothing else. Even though he was in Bankai, which should be stronger than Shurkai, Hitsugaya kept attacking empty air, exerting less pressure on Ichigo than he did in Shurkai. Then, as if realizing his acting was a bit too clumsy himself, a faint blush appeared on Hitsugaya's usually serious and earnest face. He glanced at Ichigo's position, noticing Ichigo was not far from Unohana, and behind him lay the 4 other captains. A look of joy appeared on Hitsugaya's face, and he shouted, "Damn Ryoka, dodging my attacks one after another. Don't you dare face me head-on? Bastard, don't move." Flapping his wings, Hitsugaya charged towards Ichigo again. Thus, under Ichigo's bewildered gaze, Hitsugaya ran straight into his Tensa Zangetsu. Ah! Clutching the wound on his chest, Hitsugaya's expression was exaggerated. Damn Ryoka! You predicted my prediction again. Next time, we'll fight for real. With that, Hitsugaya staggered, clutching the wound on his chest, then wobbled precisely to Unohana Retsu's side. He then lay down in the 5th spot. At the same time, the first ice flower on Hitsugaya's back dissipated. But if he was already gravely injured and fallen, how could his Bankai still be active? Hitsugaya released his Bankai, felt the flat ground, showed a comfortable smile, and even adjusted his posture to lie more comfortably.
That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated and Taking Over Ichigo's Body.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.